Welcome back to another episode of Broke Up, Not Broken. If you're going through a divorce, don't worry, you are not alone. This is your one-stop shop for mastering your life and your finances throughout the entire divorce process. In today's episode, we're joined by Luke Homen, a distinguished bankruptcy attorney hailing from the great state of Oklahoma. Luke has dedicated his career to helping individuals navigate their toughest financial challenges through bankruptcy and debt discharge. Luke's been voted best bankruptcy attorney multiple times in multiple local publications. And beyond that, he loves helping people get out of debt. Bankruptcy is amazing and powerful, and more people need to consider filing for bankruptcy protection when times get tough. And today, we're going to delve into how financial restructuring can be a crucial step in reclaiming your life after significant events such as divorce. So whether you're just starting to consider your own divorce or you're in the thick of it, this episode will equip you with the knowledge and tools you need to master not only the personal challenges you might be facing, but the financial ones as well. So grab a cup of coffee or your beverage of choice, buckle up, and let's once again get you personally and financially empowered. Luke, man, it's so great to have you here.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. This is I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to having you because a lot of the people that we work with, not only in the divorce financial planning we do, but just in general, a lot of even my retirement planning clients have gone through this experience or been maybe felt like they had their back up against the wall and they're not really sure what to do. And that's like, these are the people that you work with on a daily basis. So, like, tell me more about like the work you do, maybe even how you got into this, and we can go from there.
Well, I'll start with the backstory. That's a good one. So I'm originally from California. My wife's career took us to Oklahoma. When I was in California, I was actually a personal injury attorney, and I hated it, right? It wasn't for me. And so I got to Oklahoma and just tried to find a job, and I got a job doing bankruptcy and discovered I loved it. It was totally the right fit for me. And one of the things I love about it is we're really able to help people fix their problems. Probably just like you, in a personal injury case, they come to you with a broken leg or something bad, and you get them money, but you're not really fixing what happened. Mm. But when you're fixing their finances, you're able to take somebody who's under immense stress and hardship, come up with a solution that works for them, walk them through the process, and get them debt-free. And I just find that amazing. So I just love being a bankruptcy attorney, getting people out of debt.
There's such a stigma with it, though. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I'm bringing this up because one thing that I encourage a lot of people that I work with that are not dealing with divorce, but dealing with their, in their own traditional financial planning engagements that we do. I like to talk. I talk to them about prenuptial agreements, right? And there's this stigma around that is just almost unnecessary. And I feel it's probably the same in bankruptcy.
It is. And you've got to think part of it is the money gap, right? So credit card companies are making billions and trillions of dollars. So they can put a whole lot of information into the internet or the world about bankruptcy bad, right? And most bankruptcy attorneys are charging a very small amount of money for their services. And so I don't have the same purchasing power to go send all the information into the world that the credit card companies do. And the credit card companies like to say something like, if you do bankruptcy, it's the worst thing that's ever going to happen to you. Just keep paying your debts forever, right? And that's just not true. When you file a bankruptcy and you get out of all that debt, your life's going to be so much better. And we can rebuild your credit. We can have a much better financial life when you're not burdened by all those debt payments that are probably just getting bigger every month.
Is it true that sometimes when you've wiped away those debts and now you're starting with a clean slate, in some cases, people can start rebuilding credit like right away, right? I mean, it's not something that they have to, you don't have to wait a certain period of time. And sometimes credit scores would go up, right? Because you don't have that burden anymore.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. And one of those big reasons for it is, your debt to income ratio is a huge part of your credit score. Well, when you're filing bankruptcy, a lot of times your debts are so huge, they can be almost as big as your income. Well, you file bankruptcy, you don't have debt anymore, and your debt to income ratio just got a lot better. Well, now we eliminate your debts, and maybe you get a new car, start making a car payment. You can get a new car the day after you file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. You don't have to wait months or years. You can do it the next day. Or if you keep your car, you keep making your payments, you're building your credit that way. You can build your credit immediately.
You brought up Chapter 7. There's mainly two different versions that people like us would deal with, right? Chapter 7 and 13, right?
Right. All right. So Chapter 7 is what most people think of as bankruptcy. You get rid of all your debts in about a 3.5 month time period. You're not making payments on your unsecured debts. You're just eliminating them. And generally speaking, I don't know, 75% of consumer bankruptcies are Chapter 7s. A Chapter 13 you might use to stop a foreclosure, or you might use it if you make too much money to file Chapter 7. There's an income qualification that's complicated, right? Chapter 13 is a 5-year structured repayment plan on your debts. And so you're usually saving a lot of money versus paying it outside of bankruptcy. You have court protection. It's different in every state, every jurisdiction. So I don't want to get too specific there. But generally, higher income people are looking at a Chapter 13. And while you're in a Chapter 13, you can't take out new debt without court permission. So if you want to buy a car, first you have to show the court that you can afford it and get permission to finance a new vehicle, because they want to make sure that you are making those good financial decisions now. But in Chapter 7, there isn't that process. You file the bankruptcy, you eliminate the debt, and you start rebuilding your credit the next day.
Do you prefer one over the other?
I like to try and get as many people into Chapter 7 as you can. 5 years is a long time to be making payments on your debts, right? And if there's a way to get somebody into Chapter 7, that's usually the better answer. But there's situations where it could go both ways. My office would probably file about 75 to 80% Chapter 7 and about 20% Chapter 13.
Yeah. And I know you work with a lot of people that are going through a divorce, and this is where this comes from, right? Just like us.
Yeah.
So I have so many questions about this, so I'm going to try not to pepper you with too many of them all at once. But as you're talking this through, and I'm thinking through like you have somebody's going through a divorce, and they're trying to figure out how, like, I have to pay my financial person, so someone like myself to help them navigate the financial aspects. I have to hire maybe a family law attorney to help me through the legal aspects. And now I'm going to have to, because it's been such a mess, so to speak. Now I'm going to have to hire someone like you. So what are the costs for something like this?
Well, and don't forget also, they might have moving expenses. They might need to buy a whole new set of furniture, and they went from being a 2-income household down to being a 1-income household. So tremendous amount of costs. So even if you were going, all of a sudden your marriage went south and you're going through a divorce, even if you didn't have a lot of debt beforehand, just the process of divorce is tremendously expensive, right? So to answer your question, if you're doing a Chapter 13, a 5-year payment plan on your debts, it's going to be more expensive. You might be looking at more like $4,000 or $5,000 in legal fees, which is nothing compared to the amount that your family law attorney is going to cost. It's a small amount. If you're doing a Chapter 7, you're looking at more like $2,000 or $3,000. Okay. So many of my clients, you take a break from making your credit card payments for 2 or 3 months, and you just paid for a bankruptcy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I was trying to do the math here. I wasn't really sure what this cost, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I was trying to do the math. I'm like,
I mean, it's going to be different in different parts of the country. Oklahoma has a lower cost of living, so it's going to be cheaper here as opposed to, if you're in San Francisco. But here, maybe you're looking at $2,500 to do Chapter 7, including costs, everything out the door. So not a huge amount of money, but something.
Yeah. So then let's say they, I guess the divorce is now finalized and they've decided that they're going to go this route. What are your thoughts, like post-divorce recovery, right? I guess is what I'm asking here. What does that look like?
Let me interrupt you for a second. I would recommend they talk to a bankruptcy attorney before the divorce is finalized.
Oh, okay.
Because there's benefits and pros and cons of doing it both ways. You might be able to get a better result if you file a joint bankruptcy while you're still married, but you might be able to get a better result after the divorce. And it's very fact specific. So what I would recommend is when you're going through a divorce and you have a lot of debt, talk to the bankruptcy attorney now and at least get some advice, because it's going to be very specific to your situation, whether you should wait or whether you should do it now. And it can make a huge difference whether you're eligible for a different chapter of bankruptcy or what the process is going to look like. So to kind of come back to your question, you do the divorce, you do the bankruptcy, and assuming you're talking about Chapter 7, what you do is you're going to eliminate all those unsecured debts that you took out of this process. So your credit card debts are eliminated, your medical, your loans. If you owed money to your divorce attorney, that might be dischargeable in the bankruptcy too. A lot of times it is. Now, if you had to put up your house as collateral, it wouldn't be. But I've definitely done bankruptcies where we've discharged tens of thousands of dollars to a divorce attorney.
I don't know if I've ever heard that. That is absolutely incredible. So listeners, pay attention to that part there, because I know we deal with so many people on a daily basis that are really just, there's some real things at stake, right? There's the home at stake, and their future financial lives, and what are they going to do with the kids, and how they're going to take care of them, and all these very important things. But in order to get some of these, to get the outcome that they're aiming for, it costs money to get the support. Right.
Yeah, and part of why family law can get so expensive is if you're willing to go along and just come to a mutual outcome, but they're not, and they keep filing court pleadings and setting it for court hearings, your attorney has to respond, and they keep going. And now, even if you've got a great attorney, you might have a very high bill. On the other hand, maybe your family law attorney isn't great, and they charged you way too much money for a dismal result. Well, maybe discharging their debt in bankruptcy isn't such a bad thing.
Yeah. Do you work with the family law attorneys in the divorce proceeding?
Yeah, we definitely do. I have some family law attorneys that, have my number, and they call me up and they say, hey, we're going to be going to a mediation. What do you think would be a good outcome? How should we structure this agreement? And we could definitely, have that discussion. One thing I would definitely recommend is have each spouse responsible for their own debts, right? If me and my wife each have our own credit card, don't try and do something where I have to pay her card and she has to pay mine. If you make each person responsible for their own debts, then they could choose later whether to discharge those in bankruptcy. Where it gets really messy is if the divorce order says husband has to pay all of wife's debts, but they aren't in husband's name, he can't discharge them in bankruptcy because they're not his debts, but he still has the court-ordered obligation to be paying for her debts. So it can get really messy depending on how they structure the agreements.
I could see that happening. Does the user, authorized user aspect of credit cards come into play at all?
No, because it's based on your social security number. So when you take out a credit card, almost always it's just one person, one social security number, and only that person's responsible for the debt on a credit card. Usually the other person is just kind of a guest who creates an obligation for the person who owns the card. So the authorized user isn't actually responsible for it. Think of it like a company credit card, right? If you work for me and you go charge an office lunch on the office credit card, you're not responsible for that lunch, even though you're an authorized user on the company card.
Okay.
Now, that's very different than vehicles. Be very careful, almost never, ever co-sign for somebody, because that's not an authorized user. That's a joint obligation, and they're going to sue you if the other person stops making their payments.
Yeah, I think there's them. I appreciate you giving us some clarity there, because I've had this conversation with a few people over the course of the last couple of weeks, even. And, the attorney is trying to help them figure out, we're given one set of advice. And of course, the attorney, unfortunately, is giving another set of advice. And you just confirmed that it was bad advice, because they're trying to split the debt. Right. And she's only an authorized user on the credit card, not an actual owner of that credit card or account owner of the credit card.
Now I get why they might be fired up about it, right? Like, I made my spouse the authorized user and she went out and bought a whole bunch of stuff for herself. Okay, I get why you're upset about that. But ultimately, the person who owns the credit card is the one responsible for that debt.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. I appreciate you clarifying that, because that was my argument too. And I got a little bit of a pushback on it. So I want to make sure that I'm not.
Yeah, well, I would recommend you find some other way to make things even, right? You're bitter about that $2,000 credit card charge. Okay, well then maybe let her have the sofa. I don't know. Like, there's other ways to equal it out besides attributing debts.
Absolutely. Yeah. What about people that own businesses, right? We have a lot of cases where there's business owners there that have businesses and, they've incurred debts on the business. Talk me through some of the things that we need to be considering.
Yeah, that's going to be really complex. So one of the things you have to figure out is ownership of the business. And this can be a collision of business law and divorce law, right? So if the business document says that, I don't know, husband is 51% owner and wife is 49% owner, then you're both owning the business, and divorce judge is going to have to figure out who the ownership is. Or maybe even if the business document says the wife is 100% owner, the husband may still have a claim to ownership. Okay, so you got to sort that out first. But then when you're looking at the debts of the business, you need to look at the actual agreement that you signed. So if you're somebody like Coca-Cola, right, you could sign an agreement for syrup, and the person signing the agreement isn't going to be personally responsible. But the reality is, for small business owners, almost every agreement you sign is going to have a personal guarantee because they're not trusting the credit of your company. They're saying, Jamie, I want to go after you personally if you stop paying this company card. Mm-hmm. So what they need to do is look at the actual agreement. Was this credit card, company card, actually signed for originally by wife or by husband? If there's a supplier, who actually signed the contract? Who signed the personal guarantee? And that's the key thing to figure out, is who is personally responsible for each debt. And then you're also trying to figure out with the business, is this something you even want to continue? What may make sense is just shut down the business, split up the profit, and each spouse can start their own new business. And now it's not all mixed up together.
How long does this take? It seems like it could take a very long time to sort all this out.
Oh, it certainly could. It just depends on how complex the business is. Mm-hmm. Like, let's say it's a simple example. It's a construction company, right? It might just take as long as finishing the current project, paying the suppliers, splitting up the profit. And then the next time you have a job, husband and wife each start their own separate construction company, right? But if it's something where, like as a bankruptcy attorney, like I've got a client on a 5-year payment plan, that's going to take a long time to finish sorting out those profits. And maybe you're better off trying to somehow run the business together. But that sounds like a recipe for failure. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah. Any case studies you could share about some successes that you've had with divorce? With bankruptcy and divorce?
Well, there's a couple different ways that this can go. Sometimes we have clients who come in and, debt is incredibly stressful, right? Sometimes that's the reason why they're thinking about divorce. Like, I'm so mad at him. He went and took out all these loans and now I've got to stuck paying him, right? And so I've actually had clients come in pre-divorce who were seriously thinking about divorce. We did a bankruptcy and now you've eliminated that source of tension. And they didn't go forward with the divorce. Now that's best case scenario, right? And hopefully that's the only issue. But I could also tell you, conversely, we've had clients come in and as part of the bankruptcy, they've got to produce all their bank statements and their tax returns and everything. And I could tell you sometimes we've come in with clients who weren't thinking about divorce and then they realize that their spouse has a second family, or like I've literally seen this, and that comes out. Why can't we actually pay the mortgage? Oh, let's start looking through the financials. And now the truth is coming out. I've seen that more than once where the craziest one. Here's my favorite crazy story, right? Husband, wife, nothing unusual. We go to the court hearing and wife goes into the bathroom. Husband pulls me aside and says, hey, about a week before we filed bankruptcy, my mistress gave me $10,000 and put it in my account. Is that going to be a problem? Can we not tell my wife? And I was like, no, that's a major, major problem. As soon as she gets out of the bathroom, we're going to be talking about this. And we're going to be putting all this on the record. This is going to be great, right? Yeah, it was.
I need to know what happened there.
Well, we got a bankruptcy discharge. So the bankruptcy went successfully because the biggest thing in bankruptcy is you got to tell the truth, right? So I told them, like, we are going to put all the truth on the record right now. And so we did, and they went along with it, and then they got divorced afterwards.
Yeah.
When you got to reveal all your bank statements and all your financials, things that you've been hiding are going to come out.
It's bananas that this happens because, and we see this on our side too all the time. There's people are trying to hide money. I have a case that I'm working on right now, which is why I'm asking about the business component of this. Never mind the education of our listeners. I'm learning as we go too. But this gentleman, I use that term loosely. He has a business that he's been running for 5 or 6 years now. And last year they went on vacation and they have this beautiful home and the kids are in private school and all this other stuff. And they had $29,000 in income on the tax return. Right? So there's hidden money somewhere. There are hidden accounts somewhere. And now we're trying to unwind that. And so the message here, people that are listening, is it's all, if you're only, these cases are only going to be as successful as you are based on transparency.
Yeah.
Right. If there isn't any element of transparency in these cases, whether it be bankruptcy or your own family law case, it's probably not going to go too well.
Right. And that's a huge thing, whether it's family law or bankruptcy, is you need to tell your attorney everything, right? There's only one kind of client I hate, and that's the client who lies to me, right? I'm your attorney. I'm the one who's supposed to advise you and protect you. And if you're hiding things from me and we find it out the day before the court hearing, or in that case, 10 minutes before the court hearing, I have a lot less control over you having a successful outcome if I don't find out the information, when I asked you the first time.
Yeah. And a lot less respect.
Yeah. But also, in bankruptcy, but I'm sure family law too, like you have so much more control of the outcome if you figure out these things and you game plan for them before you file the case. Once you file the case, you're in. And now things come out later, you're not going to have as great of a result.
Exactly why I tell people all the time, we need to be coming in the first inning of these cases, not in the 7th or 8th, because there's not a whole heck of a lot we can do when we're coming in at the tail end. And there's even, we even just this past week, I've had a couple of people reach out that are looking to work with us before they even decide to drop the dreaded D word on their significant other, because they want to make sure they get their ducks in a row and they're prepared for this and they know where the opportunities lie and some of the threats. It's a SWOT analysis, right? What are their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? And that's what they want to know. And that's what we're going to do with them. And I think that's the way to go about this in any aspect of your life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One random question.
Sure.
Regarding student loan discharge.
Yeah.
Right. This has been a big topic of conversation probably in the last, probably 4 years since COVID, basically, right?
Yeah.
With the student loan pauses and payment pauses and the discharge and forgiveness and whatever you want to call it over the course of the last few years. How does that play into bankruptcy?
Okay, so this is super exciting. This is the coolest thing to happen in bankruptcy in decades, right? So on the one hand, you have the Biden administration is attempting to do these broad strokes student loan approaches, right? Everybody gets a free $10,000. That was struck down by the Supreme Court. And the reason they struck it down is the key word is it wasn't narrowly tailored, right? The president does not have the power to just give everybody a free $10,000 off their student loans. But bankruptcy is incredibly specific. You file a bankruptcy, you show that you're broke, you show that you can't pay your debts, okay? Now we have this brand new ability inside bankruptcy to discharge student loans. It's not automatic. What you do is you have a successful bankruptcy, and then we file a discharge. It is a specific lawsuit. It's against the Department of Education. Now, historically, these had a failure rate of something like 99.9%. Like I would tell clients, unless you're a paraplegic and you can never work or think again, it's just not going to be successful. But the Department of Education has reimagined how they're treating these cases. And I think it's appropriate. Now they're looking at a very client-specific, money-driven, income-based analysis. Did you try and make your student loan payments in good faith? Are you unable to pay them? Do you have an inability to pay them in the future? If you can meet those 3 criteria, we may be able to discharge your student loans in bankruptcy for the first time ever. And so just recently I had a case, we discharged $105,000 of student loan debt for this guy. That's life-changing.
Does it impact them tax-wise?
No. So here's really cool. Normally, if a creditor, whether that's the student loans or tax or credit card, if they forgive a debt, the creditor can send you a 1099-C, which is imputed income, and that creates a tax liability. In other words, if your credit card company forgave you $10,000 of debt, it creates $10,000 of income on your tax return. It's called a 1099-C. On the other hand, there's a law that says when you file a bankruptcy, you can't be given a 1099-C for imputed income. So if we're able to discharge it in bankruptcy, it's not a forgiveness, it's a discharge. And so it does not create a tax obligation.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's amazing.
That was the biggest, especially here in California. I think the state of California would charge state income tax on any.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Any last comments that you want to share with our listeners or maybe any questions I should have asked you that I didn't ask?
I would say the biggest thing is talk to a bankruptcy attorney and don't be scared and don't think that your life's going to end, and just get good advice and get it sooner than later, because the sooner you talk to somebody, the more you have open options for ways that you could approach your debt. And it may even be that once you eliminate all those debts, your marriage just got a lot better, or your divorce just got a lot better. So take bankruptcy as a very serious option, because it's amazing and it's powerful and it's much, much more affordable than any of your other options for dealing with your debts.
Yeah. And I talk to a lot of attorneys. You're one of the friendliest and least intimidating attorney that I may have met over the course of the last several years. So,
well, thank you,
listeners. If you're listening and you can't see us at this moment, pay attention to this, because I think you if you need to reach out and get some help on this, I think Luke's your man.
Well, awesome. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Hey, thank you, Luke, for sharing your expertise and helping demystify the process of bankruptcy for our listeners. For those that are interested in learning more about Luke's services or seeking his guidance, which I recommend, visit his website, convenientbankruptcy.com. And remember, if you're struggling with your own financial decisions during or after a divorce, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at Allegiant Divorce Solutions. You can visit our website at allegiantds.com for expert advice and support through this entire process. And don't worry, we're going to put all the links and everything into the show notes. So if you are driving, you'll have access to all of our information, all Luke's information. So fret not. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more informative discussions. And until next time, take the steps needed to protect and improve your financial future by leveraging the resources available to you. We'll see you again.